welcome to Defense Diaries. I'm your host, Bob Mata, and we're back. We're back again. Had kind of a medium length live today, talking about the Adnan Syed case and the big decision that came out of the Maryland Supreme Court there. But tonight we're back at it for our Tuesday installment of the one and only amazing Bill Dorsch and all of his amazing feats that he's accumulated over the course of his storied career in life. Let's bring him on. What's up, Bill? Where you at? I don't see you. Come on, Bill. Bill's not coming up on stage.
I'm here.
I see you, but you're not up on stage with me. Oh, there he is. There he is.
Okay.
Dizzy took care of it. Dizzy.
Good morning, Robert.
How are you, Bill? How
We're
are you
good.
doing, my friend?
Didn't catch any fish yesterday.
That's a shame. Yeah, we were going to go yesterday. We had a couple of guests that were lined up, and due to current litigation on some of the civil cases that are going, the lawyers that are involved asked them to wait until after some depositions were done. So we will, of course, respect that, as we don't want to impede on them hammering the city of Chicago for a bunch of money. So I like seeing the city pay out, except for the poor taxpayers that have to pay it. It's too bad the politicians and the cops weren't paying it, but such is the nature of the beast. So tonight I'm excited about our guest. We've got just a true advocate, in the sense that Stephanie doesn't have like a blood familial connection to any of the Guevera victims, but she was integral in the movement, the early movement that really got this thing going, got people to start listening about Guevera in Area 5 and what was going on over there, and like trying to get people to listen to that is an unbelievable chore. It's a really hard thing to do. So I just respect the hell out of her. She's done amazing work for a long time. Because when I hit her up today, she's like, "Oh, it's been so long. I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember everything." I'm like, "It'll be great. You'll remember enough." So let's bring her on. Stephanie Weiner, how are you, my friend? Thank you for joining us tonight.
Excellent. Fine. Thank you.
Stephanie, how are you doing?
Excellent.
So you two are familiar with each other through the past decade of trying to right all of Guevara and company's wrongs. Yes.
Yes, we are.
Just a little bit.
Yep. So Stephanie, I kind of wanted to, like, I was telling Stephanie, I was like, "Yeah, I'll ask you." She's like, "Well, I don't want to get into like my high school." I'm like, "No, we don't have to do that," but just kind of from the perspective of a boots on the ground advocate, because there's all kinds of advocates, right? There's people that write letters, angry letters, and they advocate through emails or letters or phone calls, and then there's people that advocate by being watchdogs on trials and things like that on Twitter and social media. And then there's people like you that go out and do the damn thing, where you're out there in these streets, protesting, making sure that voices are heard. How did you come about getting into that? Like, what was your drive for that?
I bet you maybe can guess that some recipes are family recipes. So in my case, both my parents were activists, and my aunt was an activist. So even when I was in elementary school, I went to protests against the Vietnam War with candles and tinfoil holders. And so
a little baby hippie.
Yeah. So over here I have one of my petitions about don't eat lettuce. So even it says contact Steffi W. in the 6th grade. So I was active in elementary school and high school and college. And so and in my union as a teacher in Chicago. So it wasn't that surprising for me to then get involved in neighborhood issues. And I was in a neighborhood group just kind of parallel to this case, which was called Neighbors Against Police Brutality. And it kind of popped off about a case about Jorge Guillen, where the man was having an episode, a schizophrenic episode, and she's calling and calling, come to the police, please come and help us. We need to get him medical treatment. And they just wouldn't come. And finally she goes, oh, he's violent, he's gonna hurt me. Oh, now we'll come. But they broke the door down and they did the famous chokehold on the back that asphyxiated him. And then within moments, we're actually covering up. They said he held a stick, and so it became kind of a spark in the Humboldt Park and Logan Square neighborhood. So I was involved in that case for 3 years. And then at that time, that was the same beginning years that Comité Exigimos Justicia was forming.
All right. And so it started with you wanting to save heads of lettuce one head at a time. And it blossomed into, you as I could just imagine you as a college student just out there, just doing the thing. And, and then of course you go into teaching. So you're an amazing person. I can tell that already. You've given your life to helping other people, to educating other people, and whether it's in a school setting or whether it's out on the street, trying to make people aware of things that they're either willfully blind about, in the sense that they just don't want to acknowledge that things like this really take place, or people that just have no idea. And either way, you're educating them. So thank you for that. That's amazing, amazing work. So tell us about this incredible committee that you were such an integral part of. What did you guys do? Well,
by the time I arrived, I made this poster that says one of the real founders of the group, Comité Exigimos Justicia, was Ruthie Pena, and she found other family. Her brother was arrested, wrongfully convicted. And in her effort to free her brother, Javi Rodriguez, rest in peace, they found other families in the neighborhood with the same thing. So she said in this print, we started in the 90s with 3, then 5, then 40 cases of innocent guys, all framed by crooked cop Detective Guevara. So by the time I came around, we already had a spreadsheet, meaning the key thing was there was a pattern. They were all from the gang crimes unit. They all had no physical evidence. In many of the cases, all the guys had actually walked into the station. Officer, I saw your last interview with Jacko Rivera, and he was common, where a lot of them walked in, officer, I heard you want to talk to me, how can I help? But that happened over and over again in these cases.
So, how did you guys, and I'm talking about the group collectively, and so this group is made up of mothers, sisters, cousins, is it mostly women?
Yes.
Would you say? Yeah. Right. Because that was the impression.
Very long to answer. It was mostly women, and mostly family members. The meetings were weekly, and mostly bilingual. And we mostly met in the basement of San Lucas Church. And there was crying and laughing and planning. And it was really the honor of all of my life's activism to be a part of this crew of women, to hang with Charlie and Esther. Their kids are now free. Ruthie, Javi was out for many, many years. And Blanca, and to then finally get to meet Nelson. Yvette and her guy gets out. Carol, me, Rose Cifuentes. You know, I have a lot of art that I brought here to show, but the crew was really tight and beautiful.
Yeah, so you sent me a ton. I was going to tell you to send it to me via, but so here I want to pull one up because so this is art that you created, right?
Yes, that's Rose Cifuentes. It says Rose speaking at a CEJ rally.
It's really beautiful. Yeah.
Well, Rose Cifuentes was an example. That was at the demonstration at Jacko Mali, at his house, not even his office. You have to understand, in those beginning years, we went to protest at the alderman's office. We went every month to the police board meeting and testified every month. So for anybody listening tonight, or I got distracted, the first little comment on the screen, but for anyone listening tonight and saying the city just paid out 100 million, 200 million, whatever they're going to wind up paying out, 36 million just for lawyers' fees to protect Guevara. For anyone thinking about the money and the payouts and taxpayer money payouts, just remember in 1995, in 1996, in 1997, every month we flooded that room to testify. And so it's for us a big "we told you so."
Yeah.
A big "we told you so." We went to the police board so often that they had to make a new law that says now you have to register in advance so we can check who the speakers are. Now you have to have a time limit. Now you have to go through security in advance. You know, all of these things that they didn't have in place that they wound up putting into place because we went and dogged them at every turn. So the Jacko Mali, I remember once it was his birthday and he went to a breast cancer event. And there we were protesting outside in the snow at this breast cancer event. This is the art that you're seeing, warning, frame up in progress. That's me on the right.
All the way
In the right. And it says room 600. And that was the case of the 3 Polish guys that were Guevara cases. And they wound up signing a confession that wasn't even in the language that they spoke.
Oh, man. Wow.
And it wasn't even, they did a crime on Milwaukee Avenue and they wound up signing a confession for murder at Milwaukee and Belmont at a Shell station. Nothing about the confession was even related to what they had done. And one of those Polish guys got deported, and one of those Polish guys, I think, might still even be in.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
So that was, I think, the protest that we had in that one.
Yeah. And can you try to explain to the people? So, you know, Bill being a Chicago cop and knowing from the inside just how hard it is to pierce that shield that they have. But then when you incorporate the mayor's office and just the city in general, and they're just in protection mode to where you're screaming and yelling and saying, look, this is going on. Why are you ignoring it? Why are you ignoring? like just explain to the people like how hard that was. Like that's the one thing I'm always trying to tell people, that when because I've been a lawyer for a long time. I've been a defense attorney for a long time, and I know that once you are sucked into the criminal justice system as a defendant, once you're convicted, it is like moving mountains to get people out, to get people, number one, to start listening, to number two, to get the courts to start listening. Because first you have to build the ground level support, right? You've got to get that grassroots movement going so that you create a voice, you create some noise, and then hopefully that noise maybe gets picked up by some local media. If you're lucky, the national media will say, "Oh, wow, this is like a crazy story. We really should follow it." But like short of that, it's just like you were saying, like you've got to be in there every single month, like clockwork, just getting. It's like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank, just writing the letters over and over and over till he got the funding for the library in the prison, right? I mean, how hard was that? And what kept you guys going when it had to have been kind of rejection after rejection after rejection? It's like, what keeps you going?
Yeah. Well, in that question, it really is a difference that I didn't have a loved one in jail. So I can say there was so much hardship, but the support from those meetings, just the regular comité meetings, it kept people standing. There was so much shame that people had to deal with. Maybe the mother believed the kid, but the aunt didn't believe, or the uncle. Now you're starting to see art of the guy's coming home. So that's Johnny Flores when he got home, and he's showing his brush and his comb and his, everything laid out in that first new house when he got out.
That was probably his life in prison for 2 decades, right? Like,
well, he was not that happy that the art that he got was about his, deodorant and his brush, but it definitely, the way that he had that message on his mirror about his next meeting, that he had to go to, it just struck me very prison. The transition is real.
Well, and so you didn't tell me that, and when I looked at the piece, that was the first thing I thought, that you're institutionalized when you're in there for that period of time. I mean, that's how you live. So like for him to have set it up the same type of way is very striking. I got it right away. So I could see why he might have been like, wow, like you made a reminder of me in prison. But yeah, you did. And that's exactly what it should be. We don't want people to forget,
Right. So you're right in the sense that we went to all of these things without a clue of whether or not we were being effective, whether or not any of the guys were going to get out. And there was tension. Well, why are we doing Guevara? My kid is Halverson. My kid is Polnitsky. My kid is Woodall. Why are we only focusing on this? So there was hardship and there was sadness and stuff. But I'm just going to go through. I'm going to hold my fingers up and say the comité was not just about getting the guys out. And I think that did make a big difference. The three kind of goals of the Comité Exigimos Justicia was F, F, and F. So the first F was free the guys. By the way, we didn't know about the woman at that time, so it really was free the guys. But it wasn't just free the guys, because we were also sending newsletters every month or every 2 months to the guys in prison, telling them what we were doing and how it was going. And it made a world of difference to a lot of them. And we were sending holiday cards that we would pass around and everyone was signing. And that made a world of difference, because like some of these people didn't have any family backing them up. But most did. If they were in the comité, they had a NASCAR team behind them, Anyway,
yeah, and we had that, like we had like Jocks on last week, and he was talking about exactly like that. For him, he had his mother.
I used to hang out with Gwen. I used to hang out with Gwen. So I knew about over and over again, the people who had family that believed in them, those are the ones that came out like popcorn. The Almodovars, it's not a surprise. Those sisters fought. Anyway, when we say free the guys, it also meant taking care of their kids on the outside. So we did holiday gifts for the kids, and we did fundraisers, making pasteles every year. And with the money that we would do, you know, things for people to help them out, right? And even if someone would come and say, oh, Statesville is closed down, I can't get in, well, who do I call? So we helped each other with carpooling. We helped each other with visit, you know, strategies. We worked on the campaign about phone call bills into the prison. So free the guys meant the whole support system, inside and out. And some of those mothers wouldn't have made it without the support that committee meant to us. They would have long dropped out. So like Rose Cifuentes, the one in that picture, she couldn't tell the people at her work, this is my son and this is where he is.
Right. Yeah.
They would say it's all gang guys. Maybe they didn't do that crime, but they got what they came, you know, or
yeah. And was that like a common theme that like these guys were all coming out of, you know, either Humboldt Park or, you know, that area where it's heavy gangs, and that was exactly the saying that you hear most. Well, they may not have done that, but they done something to deserve to be in there. Was that like resistance that you'd hear a lot of the times?
Yeah, and even amongst some of the family members had to kind of, you know, they had been through a lot, and so they had to kind of get their voice and their pride, which is just another example that Comité, we laughed a lot and we learned a lot of skills, phone call skills, speaking skills. Rose Cifuentes did not want to speak at this rally. But then she was really, really proud she did. So over and over again, it was like a league of one's own, you know, we just were all transformed by it and grew from it. Anyway, the second thing was we weren't just a support committee that gets the guys out. Our second demand was to fire and prosecute the people that did it. And that meant Guevara, Halverson, whatever. You're talking about a time when Xowski had already been put in jail as, quote, the most crooked cop in the history of Chicago. So I sent you one of the flyers that said Xowski was just the tip of the iceberg. So if he's the most corrupt cop, now how are you not going to go and investigate the 20 guys that, you know, work for him every morning?
Right.
So the whole thing was a big I told you so. So the second one was to fire and prosecute. And as most of your listeners know, right now, Guevara is walking around in San Antonio with 2 pension checks.
Wow.
One from the police and one from the Parks Department. And got $36 million paid to have his lawyers paid for him to defend him.
Man, it's unbelievable.
The third big demand of the Comité was fix the system for the future. So
that's a really hard one.
Well, we went through, for example, the police union contract, and we looked sentence by sentence of how crooked cops were being protected. For example, every time the contract, and maybe Bill, maybe I've got it wrong, it's 20 years ago, but essentially every contract, their reprimands would get erased. So you had a system in which plus there was no limit. There was one guy that had like 5,000. He was like famous for complaint after complaint. There was no system that says when you hit 500, you got to go to the principal's office. When you hit 1,000, you got to stay home for a week. When you hit 2,000, you know, there was no system. There's more oversight for the people that drive the yellow school buses,
It's
or
true. So
or
true.
20 other jobs that you would be automatically put on flagged and supervised,
So true.
all kinds of systems. And that was built into the contract. Then the OPS, which is what we called it then, I don't even know what it's called now, but the OPS had a big velvet curtain which says anyone punished 30 days or less, it's invisible. You can't see the record of what happened. It's only when it goes over 30-day punishment that you could have access to see it.
Yeah.
So you had these guys, like I'm telling you, a cop walking around with 1,000 complaints, but always with the little hand slap.
So it's under 30 days, so it's not showing up like right. It's like, and they know that, between their union, who's incredibly powerful and who is able to mitigate almost anything that they do, and you have that situation where the cop is well aware of what they can get away with without it appearing as a ding on them, so that it just gives them free reign to just rain terror on people, like in neighborhoods. It's insane.
These details are 20 years old, so I'm not saying I don't know, but even to the point where I would have, if I get called to speak to the police, I would have to go in, I think, within 24 hours and certainly have no access to see what they have on me, right? But a police officer who's being called, number one, doesn't have a clock on them. So they can meander in 4 days later after they've called all their friends from, at a secret park, by their house or whatever. And they have access to find out what is on the data of evidence already. So right. The testimony can already, but it was like that. We went step by step. For example, the money, OPS was still command channel review, meaning that the final say that you could do a really excellent investigation, but ultimately the packet gets handed to the big Magilla or whatever, and they can put it in the garbage can. There's no mandatory follow through. And at the time, OPS was part of the budget of the police department. So it was constructed as a conflict of interest.
Right. I mean, there's a built-in conflict right there. You can't trust it is the bottom line. It's like, with internal affairs, it's pretty much the same concept, but you can sense the tension between the IA guys and the regular cops. Like, that they know, like, they consider them to be kind of the snitches. They're talking about the regular cops in terms of the internal affair guys, but it's still, it's like, it's still in-house. You know what I mean? It's not I
don't know what you mean. Yeah, the first indication that we ever got that we were even being heard or noticed was we went and met with the feds, and I have the cool name tags that we got that turned pink with time-sensitive ink and such. Anyway, and we did this whole hour-long presentation to the feds, and that was the first time that somebody in the other side said, we'll hand this over to the team that is investigating Guevara. Boom. That's the first time. And that was years in.
Yeah.
Where we got that notification.
And it's like when that happens, everybody's so excited. You leave that because it's been the first nibble, right? And then you're trying to follow up to see if anything ever came of it. It's like, because you're like, all right, did they just say that shit to make us happy and pat us on the head and say, all right, move along type thing? Or did we get lucky? Did we actually find somebody who cares? Because that's what it is, right? It's like, you have to find that unicorn somewhere in the system that's on the government side of the equation that's willing to listen and willing to accept what is an uncomfortable truth for them, which in the long run is going to cost the money or the government potentially a lot of money. If what they're hearing is true, like it's like money, like just follow the money. You always follow the money. It always leads back to the money. It's always going to revolve around money and in their liability to have to pay out on all these deeds that were done by agents of the government, you know, and they know when it's willful and when it wasn't negligence, when it's done purposefully. No insurance company's paying for that. That is coming straight out of the city's coffers. It's coming right out of their pockets, which is coming right out of the taxpayers' pockets, which is why the taxpayers should be pissed off about this. They're the ones paying. Like we robbed.
Woulda, coulda. 1995, we're outside of City Hall. Woulda, coulda. You know, when you think of how many lives have been absolutely decimated and children price, unbelievable, and the amount of money. But that just does remind you it was a different time in the sense that they didn't understand. By the time we were doing car caravans, we thought that we couldn't believe we had found 40 cases, 30 cases. Then BuzzFeed came in and got it up to 70. Then Black Lives Matters came around and there was new awareness, and the police department was on probation. Then Kim Fox came, then pro bono lawyers came, and, you know, Northwestern superstars and Lovey and Lovey and Bonjean and all of these factors that really added. You know, when BuzzFeed worked on the article, Melissa Segura worked on that article for 2 years investigating.
When I started, we couldn't get Bill logged on. Bill was like down in the little backstage area where we were at in the beginning there, Stephanie. And Bill was having he is in Europe. He's got spotty internet and he's in an advanced age where I know I'm not very tech savvy. So Bill is even less tech savvy than I am. So it's made for some pretty comedic lives with Bill and I, me trying to get Bill on, where I've just had the live running for 20 minutes while I'm trying to figure out why Bill can't get out. So at any rate, my point is that I started reading Melissa's article, which is amazing. Like I think I was.
There's a book coming now and a movie in the works, you know, so the whole thing snowballed. But the main thing to say is, when people get out, they say, thank you, God. They say, thank my mother. They say, thank my brilliant lawyer. They say, thank you, Channel 5, for exposing it. And those factors really, really did make a difference. But the activism that created the pattern is the real key, I think, that created the situation that all those other factors came to be.
100%, because that's the noise. Like that's the noise that has to be made. It's like without that noise, you're never going to get heard. A single mom out there screaming that her son's innocent, unfortunately, in the world that we live in, is not going to get heard. She's just not going to get results. She's not going to get a lawyer, the Lovey and Lovies and all the big shooters, Northwesterns, Innocence, you know, like none of those, you're not getting them involved until there's that low rage that's just like vibrating that they can feel. And as it grows louder and louder, that's what gets their attention. So yeah, you're right. I mean, without that activism, none of that happens. You know, I mean, like that historically in our country, that's the only thing that gets shit done. Like whether it's wrongful convictions going all the way back to, you know, prohibition days when, you know, women were sick of their husbands being drunk and beating them all the time. They're like, you know what? We're done with the alcohol thing and we're going to go out and we're going to get this stuff banned because it's ruining our lives. And they did, you know, and all the way through women, like unbelievably not having the right to vote. You know that women didn't have credit. Like women couldn't get credit cards in this country until I think it was like somebody said it to me the other day, and I had to pick my brain up off the floor and put it back in my head because it was like the 1960s or 70s before women could get their own credit cards in this guy. So activism is the only way that things get done in this country. I mean, it really is the foundation that right to assemble and the right of free speech is so instrumental in being able to have our voices heard, because it's the only thing that the government hears. They're not hearing us individually. They have to hear us collectively as a group. So that you're absolutely right. Like you need that backbone in terms of the mothers and the families, because you know they're the pulse of it, they're the heart of it, but everything around it is the service or the central nervous system. You know, I mean, that's what makes the thing go is everybody else that you can get in on what you're on and say, look, this is something I'm worth, you know, that's worth fighting for me. And I'm going to get out there. And instead of sitting on my couch and doing nothing, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do something to help people, you know, and that kind of activism is unbelievable. Like it really is. It's like, you know, you can watch it on TV and you're like, wow, like people are really getting out there doing it. And it's always such an impressive thing for me. Oh yeah, thanks. Defense attorney Mao. It's been, it's 50 years this year for crank, but like, that's insane to me. Like women could.
Well, you know, the thing is, a lot of lawyers, not the movement lawyers, but a lot of lawyers say, don't protest outside. It's got a bad look. You'll put stink on the case. You may say something that will hurt the case. So if it wasn't for the committee kind of guiding each other and supporting, most lawyers tell the people, I'll take care of it. I'm the professional. You wouldn't operate on your son's arm. You're not a doctor, you know? So there's this whole push to not speak up. It's too messy. And similarly,
I just want to say, even when I was on the police department, one of the things that I learned very early on when I saw the wrongdoing is, alone you have no power. Okay, and that's I feel like the women who had their sons in jail wrongfully convicted, alone you don't have this power. So thank God they developed this unity and made a voice that was heard, because in the police department, I couldn't do anything about it. I tried. I brought it forward. I talked to my boss and said, this is wrong. This arrest shouldn't be made. And they said, no, well, we just want to solve the case, Bill, right, you know, for statistics. So where do you go? You can't go. I can't. Burge was already a problem in area 1 or 2. Other coppers didn't even believe there were bad cops on the job. I mean, I didn't want to believe it. I was working when going to meals with these guys.
Right.
All right. I mean, they're not out there making noise and telling you we're screwing this guy over, you know, or they're not telling you why they're screwing him over. But when I got away from the police department, it wasn't until I walked into Northwestern that I really had an opportunity to voice what I knew. So, and that's when I connected also through Northwestern with the Innocence Projects. Mm-hmm. I mean, with the group of women. And I didn't even want to go to the meetings that they were having. I mean, I thought they're going to have some information about some cases that I have a lot of serious questions about, but I couldn't go to them because I was testifying already.
Absolutely.
In these cases.
Well, even when we went to the police board, there was a lot of pressure, have somebody else testify. But like when Ruthie went, well, when anyone went, they got told what you say in the police board goes on the official transcript and it can be used against your loved one in the trial. So if you went and testified and said, we're so angry, it was a 12-year-old. It was a 12-year-old eyewitness. Or we're so angry. For example, in the Mario Flores case, they didn't call the consulate, the Mexican consulate. or in, but the details of your case, people were so afraid because they didn't want to hurt their loved ones by testifying, by speaking at the police board. So I really understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and from the
sabotage your own effort to help.
Yeah, from the legal side of it, especially from the defense attorney side of it, we have that reality for us as defense attorneys that we know that the more we push back against the government in terms of speaking out pre-trial, especially, that they just have ways of spinning it on us to where they make us out to be the bad guys. I mean, you see it all the time. You see it in cases that are going on now, where anytime defense attorneys come out and want to kind of lay their theory of the case out to try to even the scales of justice in the pre-trial stage of a case, it gets spun out on the defense attorneys that they're whack jobs or they're clowns, or they're trying to spin this so that they can get their client up. So it's like we're super in tune to that, and it's unfortunate because that's really just born out of ignorance, out of the people that don't understand how the system really works. You know what I mean? But that's a lot of people. Like, a lot of people really don't get what's going on in the criminal justice system. They just assume that everything that they see on Discovery ID and Oxygen and all the channels that they watch their true crime stuff on is gospel, and that's just not the way it is. And like, I sit here live after live talking about the cases that I'm talking about from experience, not this person that's been on the sidelines and has no idea what I'm talking about, but somebody who's been fighting in the system for 22 years and just getting my head caved in on repeat by the power of the state. I know how real it is, so like, I'm out here as a watchdog for defense attorneys and the defendants and their constitutional rights in the system, because if I'm not going to do it, I don't know who's going to do it, because there's not many voices out there. So, I went from advocating in a courtroom for my clients and for the citizens of our country in terms of protecting our rights, to trying to do it online and trying to get my voice out there and trying to get people to have a better understanding of what defense attorneys do and what we mean to the system, and that not all cops are good guys. Not all prosecutors are good guys. There's bad everywhere. And the ramifications of the bad from that side of it are devastating. And like Guevara, and just the waste that he laid for not just the victims who went in, not just for the victims' families who got no justice, but for everybody that those lives touched, their kids, their loved ones, their friends, their fellow employees, anyone that they knew. It affected so many lives. I mean, the count is in the thousands in terms of the victims. When you're stretching the victim chain out to as long as it can go, is massive. When you're talking about 57 people being thrown in on murder beefs that they didn't commit, it's insane. And like, no one's heard about this story.
Well, then if they're just entering for some reason this episode, then they ought to know the good news, which is after Javi got out, after Jacques got out, after Mario Flores got off of death row and then out, then it became like popcorn. When Roberto Almodovar came out, there was some of the guys, maybe, I think, at the gate. But when Roberto got out, then the next one that got out, Roberto was at the gate with the other guys. Yes. And now when a guy gets out now, there's all the other guys that know how to welcome them and take them to the ball game and take them to the Christmas party at the lawyer's office and to help them, with everything. So people who are just tuning in ought to know we're up to, I think, 46 exonerated. We got the award at the Innocence Project last spring in Phoenix because Chicago is now the exoneration capital of the US. And a lot of it is because of the success of the Guevara case.
Yeah.
So people ought to know we had a mass exoneration, which is unheard of. What is that? 2-for-1 sale, that 8 people were exonerated in one swoop on one day, because unbelievable. And Guevara's word is dirt and invisible, no longer allowed in legal court. So if people are listening, they ought to know there's a part of it that's an incredible success story because of all the factors that we just mentioned.
And it's true, and it really is. It goes back to what we started talking about in the beginning, which was the advocacy, and without that, it never happens. Because just on their own accord, the government and cops aren't going to say, "Oh yeah, you know what? I'm feeling pretty guilty. I'm in my 70s now. I just want to fess up that I put about 60 people, just shy of 60 people, innocent people, in prison on murder beefs. Figure I should come clean, let these guys out for the you know what I mean? That's not going to happen. But for the advocacy,
still paying for it not to happen. Not only is it, which brings me to this other point, which is something that you said, which is we never really did understand while I was in the Comité Exigimos Justicia, why did Guevara do it? And in part, we thought it was like Bill said, which is they had to close cases. They had to have the stats. But ultimately, I think it was nothing more mysterious than a Xowski payoff system, where one gang would pay every Friday to Guevara to say, what we do this week, you pin it on the other side. And I just went to the memorial service of Javi Rodriguez, who was one of the first cases that we got out, and a glorious, glorious human being that we all loved. And at the memorial service, this guy, Carlos Andino, was there.
I did that one. I did that case also.
Yeah. And ultimately they said, well, do you have any idea of why he picked you? And ultimately he was like, I don't know. I walked into the Quick Trip to buy my chips, and I saw him look at me and say, there's a possible person that I can pin it on. So that side of it, of these guys, and yeah, they were living a high-risk life. So that's true. But some of it was so arbitrary of who caught a case and why.
Right.
That part was completely arbitrary, because on Fridays, Guevara got a check that said, whatever we do, go throw it the other direction.
Yep.
But all of the activism that we did, we kind of didn't understand the real motive.
Money.
So you can say follow the money, but
I mean, do we still really understand the real motive? You know what I mean? That dude's got to go to bed, at night, and be able to sleep. And I wonder if he sleeps like a baby. I mean, that dude's got to be able to look in the mirror every day and just
it's like Xowski. I mean, the corruption, remember, there weren't cameras on every corner, and there wasn't emails and receipts. And a lot of the receipts, these cases, in Javi's case, he was with his mother, and they were buying turkey for Thanksgiving, but the loop had already, security camera. It just was a different time. So the amount of blatant corruption that was going on in Xowski's house, of team, was unheard of, in part because it was this new gang crimes unit, and they had hired people with different kinds of training because they had connections to the, streets. It just unsupervised, wild inappropriateness. It was
What I want to add, when it comes to Majanowski, why did the federal government stop with him? There was ample evidence from the same witnesses against Majanowski that connected Guevara, Helverson, and others to
All
the
right, you
same
guys,
crime.
you can't tell the view who's Majanowski. Our viewers have no idea. You guys, we have a few Chicagoans in here, but we have people from all over the world that watch that. Give some background. Who's Majanowski? Tell us a little bit about.
Well,
you don't have to go into great detail.
Joe Majanowski was on the Chicago gang team, gang crimes unit. Okay, and him and the Kabaj that came out of the 14th district, this small group of people started using the police powers to intimidate gangs, one gang against the other, playing them off against the other. You go rob their drug house, give us the drugs, and we'll sell the drugs, and we'll split it with you. Or they were offering protection. I mean, there's going to be guys coming in here, Bob, they're going to tell you that they're going to admit they were selling drugs for the gang. All right, that's part of the lifestyle that was going on in Humboldt Park. They're going to tell you that they were going into the police bar across from Area 5 on Belmont Avenue regularly to meet with Majanowski and give him the money for protection in the police bar.
Guevara had, I don't know how many girlfriends and I don't know how many children and how many bills that man had, but it wasn't a question of was he sleeping in his moral compass. His life was completely out of control, and that's what was allowed in the Wild West. I went to Javi's trial, and I remember them interviewing, I don't know if it was Polnitsky, Woodall, or Halverson, but one of the cops, right? And they're interviewing, and they say to the man, "Whoa, officer, something." And then they go, "And officer, where do you live now?" And the officers, "I object." And then they go, "No, you have to say." And then the officer says, "I live in Colorado." And then they go, "Well, why do you live in Colorado?" And I'm in the court thinking, who cares where this man lives, you know? And he goes, "Well, because I'm in prison in Colorado." So the testifying officer was in prison for selling drugs in the parking lot of the police station of, Humboldt Park area. So everyone was doing everything with no supervision. And because it was the gang crimes unit and it was new, there was one guy in the scrapbook that they picked up on a crime, and they were asking for the death penalty the night that he had been picked up already. And then they let him go 2 days later, but yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It's
I keep telling people that, our subs and our viewers that, there's this series called We Own This City that's about the Baltimore Gun Trace Task Force, which it's subsequent to everything that was going on in this. That was happening in the early 2000s. It's the exact same thing. It was like this rogue band of cops. And I was going through today, I was talking about the decision, a wrongful conviction case that's been very famous from the Serial podcast, Adnan Syed out in Baltimore. That's just been a hard fought battle forever. People on both sides of that thing. But ultimately in the state of Maryland, they created a statute of vehicle because of so many bad cops and because of so many just wrongful convictions on cases that they now know can't be trusted. They created a vehicle, a way for prosecutors to be able to file motions to vacate convictions as opposed to forcing the defendants to go through the system and fight the fight. And, like when Kim Fox finally said, I'm done dealing with this dude's shit. Like this office is no longer going to be defending that man's actions. I mean, that was like my favorite thing that she did when she was in office, Right.
But there's still money. The lawyer, somebody's still paying that man's lawyer.
I know it.
So
I know it.
because there's so many more guys coming out with cases to be paid for just for Guevara.
I know.
But yeah, but to make it a little happier, so you know, I was going to show you, this is when Roberto got out at the gate and he signed it.
Love it.
Signed
I love it.
it.
So people are loving your art.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, people are going nuts over your art.
And
so is there anywhere people can get their hands on this art if people wanted to buy this art?
Yeah, the name of my website is Revolutionary Lemonade Stand. And I worked for years to make art about the activism of this case. This is Gabriel Solace, who he was on death row. Yeah. And when he got out, he used his money to open a pharmacy in Mexico. Wow. Yeah. And this is Roberto at the gate, more welcome homes. And and this is the women of Comité. And every year we made pasteles de justicia. So, and we used to sell those for the money to the committee.
I love that. I love your art too. It's amazing. It reminds me, I buy a lot of concert prints. And you're like, you could definitely do some like concert prints. It's got like, they have that vibe, except yours is like much more meaningful than a concert print. So like there's actual like heart in it. So it's yeah, it's beautiful work. It really is incredible. Well, thank you for sharing it. You sent me, so when I was talking to Stephanie earlier today, like about an hour after we got off the phone, I started just getting ding, 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 because she was going through her archives, because she was taking a trip down memory lane, just pouring through her box of all of her memories and all of the archives of all the work that they'd done. And so she was taking pictures and sending them to me. And I was trying to get them all uploaded because I wanted to be able to show a bunch of. So I'm glad that you're pulling out ones that I haven't been able to show, because the art's amazing. It's beautiful. And it's really like a visual representation of your heart, really, because you clearly have a huge heart and you've done amazing things with your life.
I don't think Bill ever saw this photo, so I'll show. It's from a protest outside of the Shakespeare station, District 14, I think. It's the door, the reflection of our demonstration outside the police.
That's cool.
This is outside of Area 5, you know, and this is outside. The new police station is on Michigan. Am I right? Michigan Avenue?
Right.
Yeah. Well, the auditorium where the police board meetings are held, when we went to protest, I noticed that they now have like 6 doors, so that if there's a protest, the board can run away outside the doorway. So I thought, wow, we've really even affected the architecture of the new police station, because one of the demonstrations, you know, we wound up sitting in the actual police board chairs and stuff. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. So the heavy metal rehab, so is that, she's clearly much more of an artist than I. So is it lino or wood block cutting or neither?
Oh, what else? I never guessed that would be the question. The answer is all different. Silkscreen, woodcut, lino, but it's all peace and justice. My art now is about New Mexico justice. So I'm doing stuff about the downwinders, people that got radiated during the Trinity bomb before Hiroshima and never got compensated.
Wow.
And they have a committee, the Tularosa Basin Radiation Downwinders Consortium. And oh my goodness, it looks so much like Comité. These people that sing their heart outs and march and fly to Washington until they get justice.
You're amazing.
Well,
You're amazing.
It shows you that's not my committee. That's me helping them. The point is, there's some pretty hip women that know how to kick in and work together. And it has made all the difference. Oh,
I've got like
so
a
many
very
cases.
I've got a very, very dear friend who's a New Mexico Rex. His name's Eric Carter Landine. His brother was killed when he was an infant. At this point, it's been, I think, 30 years about, and they've been trying to get justice for his brother because they know who did it, and they've just never made the arrest. And I'd love to connect you two because he is very much an advocate. He's created his own. I'm going to put you two together. I think that you guys would have an amazing conversation. Even though you're kind of working in a different area, I think that you guys would enjoy each other and probably be able to connect one another with some more amazing people that are huge advocates. So remind me to do that. Like, seriously, you'll like Eric. He's a good guy, and he's a fellow New Mexico resident. So,
Well, you know who lives out here is Melissa Segura.
Yeah, he does.
So
Yeah.
we got an all-star cast with her here.
Yeah.
I love it.
But
I love it. All right.
there's a difference between if it hadn't been a pattern, your friend having just the one incident, it really is trickier for people to understand. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's been doing the battle with the attorney general out there, and every prosecutor that gets elected, like he goes to them, and they just constantly are trying to advocate, and they just constantly run into brick walls, and it's been super disheartening for him. It's like, you know how it is. It's the highs and the lows. They're like, oh, we're gonna look at it, and then no, we don't have enough to go on, so it's like a constant, just emotional roller coaster for him.
The people like Ruthie, the people like Esther and Charlie and Rose and the Almodovar sisters and Blanca's father, meeting after meeting coming, and the Montañez and the Serrano family, and Berta Escamilla, all of these women, that's some
firepower. That's woman power right there.
Really energy that we were honored to.
Well, I said it like when we had Jacques on last week. I'm like, man, this is all about the women. That's women power, just taking care of some business.
Yeah, but it's the guys looking out for the guys at the gate now. That's who's at the lawyer's office for the Christmas party. And at the Exoneration Innocence Project, you get goosebumps when they say, everyone in this room of 1,000, please stand up if you were exonerated. And these guys are coming with new babies and strollers and girlfriends, and that is a powerful new support system that they're able to be for each other now. So it's really people like Roberto Almodovar and Jacques who are really going, doing the shoulder to shoulder with the new guys. That's a beautiful thing also.
Yeah, he was he made a lot of fans last week when he was on with us, because you know how he is. He's very, very gregarious, very outgoing, and he's got like a huge heart. When you come out of that situation one of two ways: bitter or optimistic and wanting to help and to spread a message. And he went the positive route, and he's an infectious guy. You just can't help but love him. So everybody. Same
with all of them, though. If it wasn't for each other, they would have fallen.
For sure.
It's not about charisma,
Yeah. Strength in numbers, always.
Those guys are holding each other up through, and some of them are having such difficulty. So. Yeah.
Well, that's why we're doing this, to spread the word. All right. So I promised you it'd be about an hour. I kept you 5 minutes too long. You're amazing.
We dusting off the 2005 car caravan energy.
Yeah, you're amazing, though. You really are.
It was my honor to be with that crew. I'm trying to take the energy of Javi and Ruthie and Esther and all of those women that kept it going and try and live my life that righteously. Really, it was my honor to participate with them.
Yeah, well, you're an excellent voice for them, and you're doing it. You're doing it. You're living it. So, and we're all grateful for it. You know, those of us who are smart enough to know that folks like you are absolutely critical to our country functioning on any kind of successful level. Just because we're all human, and there's good and there's bad and there's ugly, and we need a lot of the good ones out there to try to undo the bad. So thank you for all your just hard fought battles and your love and your moral compass.
Any episode that needs the scrapbook, you call me.
All right, I love it. All right, so we've been throwing your links for your Instagram and your website in the chat. You guys go flood it, buy some art, support the arts, because it's all going to the wonderful place, and it all comes from the heart. So we really thank you for joining us tonight. You always got a home here anytime you want to jump on.
The feeling is mutual, Bill. To know that you were our eyes on the inside. One time I was at a copy store and I saw the head of the police board, and I go, "You look familiar. Are you an activist?" And he said, "No." He said, "You look familiar. Are you a lawyer or a police officer?" No. And we had looked familiar because we had protested so much eye to eye. So to know that you are on the inside doing such righteous things is beautiful.
Right.
I love Bill. Bill's a hero.
Yeah.
Bill's my guy. Bill's my guy. All right, you guys, you are wonderful. Thank you so much to everybody in the chat. Thank you for hanging with us tonight. To everybody who supported the show tonight, thank you for that. To all my mods, thank you for double duty.
Javi.
Yes, heavenly birthday. All right, you guys, we love you, and we will catch you tomorrow. We're gonna get into some Delphi tomorrow, Bill's favorite case. It's like you're always on that Delphi case. I think the people are getting tired of it, Bob. I'm like, Bill. Believe me, I want it to be over too. It never ends, Bill. It never ends. So, but we'll see you. Bill and I will see you next Tuesday. Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the wonderful stories. Thank you for showing us your beautiful art. And we will be sure to see you again for sure. All right.
Okay.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you on the flip side.